Hello, my name is Vicki Grote, and this is Module 3 for EDL 853, Special Education Interviews. The people that I interviewed: Sarah is administrator for the Battle Creek Area Catholic School. She's been principal at St. Joseph Middle School Elementary for 5 years. Before that, she was a special education teacher and a gen ed teacher for 16 years at Lakeview Public Schools. The teacher that I interviewed was Lori. She works for the Traverse City ISD. She's been a teacher for 29 years in special education. And the para that I interviewed was Kathy. She works for the Battle Creek Public Schools. She's been a para for 2 years, 13 years as a special education teacher, and 8 years as a consultant. The first child procedures for Battle Creek Area Catholic Schools, it is recommendations from teachers, and then when there's a recommendation, we contact the public school for testing. That's as a private school. We work with our public school, so we would at St. Joe Middle School and Elementary, we would contact Lakeview Public School. Teacher, for Lori, the screening is done by recommendations by the teacher, and then paraprofessional, same thing. They follow teacher recommendations. What is the most challenging part in their role with regards to special education, and why? Sarah talked about when a child is not qualified for services and trying to explain that to parents. Also trying to explain the laws and regulations when it comes to testing and qualifications. And very frustrating is that we're a private school, so less services are provided, and that often causes us to lose students because we can't meet the needs of our students. Lori talked about not getting parent support, or parents not supporting the work of the teachers, and also the same for administrators not supporting the teachers. But recently, in regards to administrators not supporting that, she has a amazing principal who has been in special education before becoming a building principal, so she feels that that is not an issue anymore. Kathy talked about challenging part is teachers, the amount of paperwork that is needed to be done, and trying to level the playing field for special education students. What is the rewarding part of their job? Sarah feels that when she is able to give parents an answer to the questions, or her parents, their student is able to receive services, and helping to make sure that the parents find appropriate services and placements for their student. Lori talked about when a student gains confidence, when they go from victim to victor, and when she sees that remarkable growth in her students. And Kathy talked about when the light bulb goes off and the student gets it. And then she talked about how it's very rewarding when she, later on in life, after she's had a student, she gets a thank you note from a student or the parents. And forming relationships is very rewarding in her career. Forming relationships with not only the students but the parents. What advice do they have on supervision for special education staff? Sarah said that keep asking questions. Don't be satisfied with the answer. If you're not sure, keep asking, keep digging for the answers to the questions that you have, and making sure you're staying in contact with your special education supervisor, and push for clarification. Lori talked about remembering staff have a tipping point. Don't push them too far. Don't put those expectations on them that when things are, when they're struggling, don't push them. She also mentioned that make sure you develop a safe care plan for the students, for the faculty, and also making sure that as administrator, think outside the box. It doesn't have to be the same old. Think outside the box. Make sure but always remember to put your students first. Kathy mentioned making sure you attend all IEP meetings. Make sure you're sharing with the general ed staff what's going on, what needs to happen with the students that are receiving services. And then getting to know your students. Don't just know them as a name. Oh, they're special ed. Really get to know the students and what they're like, and be in the classroom with them. How do they work efficiently with parents with special needs children? Be involved in IEP meetings. Help parents understand what is being said. Make sure you can clarify all the acronyms that are being thrown out there in IEP meetings or placement meetings. And making sure that the parents are understanding the language that is being used. Dig deep down in those meetings. There's a lot of stuff being said, and it's often overwhelming. So take time to sit and talk with the parents. Like do a debrief, or during the IEP meeting, or if you have a feeling that the teacher or the parents don't understand, ask for clarification on the behalf of the parents. Lori talked about parents are the biggest challenge in special education, and when they don't understand what you're trying to do. Be constant and clear with your expectations with the parents. Just let them know what is needed to be done. Let them know that you are there for the best interest of their child. Kathy talked about, remember that these are somebody's babies. I really like that statement, that you are taking care of someone else's child. And how would you want your child to be treated? You should be treating that child like that. Always start a meeting with a positive. Many times she's been in meetings and it's always been negative, and feels that it's so important to start a meeting with a positive note, something positive about the student. Be flexible and keep the lines of communication open. How do they work with regular ed teachers with students with special needs? Sarah talked about making sure teachers know their students with the IEP plans. Make sure you know those plans and what the student's going to need, or also know the accommodations that they are needed. Lori mentioned she works in a self-contained center-based program, so she really doesn't do a lot of work with the gen ed teachers. Occasionally they'll come in for a brainstorming meeting, and that's pretty much when she's working with gen ed teachers. Kathy talked, make sure you work with your gen ed teachers on goals. Do small group work together. But that's often a problem because of the time constraints that both gen ed and special ed teachers have. Next, what advice do you have for a first-year administrator? Sarah mentioned that you should be very positive. Develop a positive relationship with the special education supervisor. You don't want to come in and say, I know this, you know that. Be open to them. Form a good relationship so that special education teacher knows or special education supervisor knows that you care about the students, and we're all working together on the same page. Lori talked about take CPI training, be visible, and spend time in the special education classroom. Same thing, getting to know your students. Kathy talked about making sure you attend all IEP meetings and understand all the needs of the child, and be available. Be available to your special ed teachers. How do they describe the role of the special education teacher and the building principal? Sarah talked special education teachers are also case managers in our building, and they do everything. So sometimes they're doing a lot. I should say a little. They're doing a lot. Lori talked about principal. Her principal was a special education teacher, and so she feels that that her principal is always there to support her teachers. She knows, and also a great thing with her principal is that she knows the laws and the challenges that are being faced. Kathy talked about provide support, communication is key, and to attend all meetings. What are the characteristics what characteristics do they seek in aspiring administrators with regards to special education? Sarah said be an advocate for the child, be an advocate for the parents. Lori said knowledgeable of the laws, compassionate to differences, be open to new ideas, and understand disabilities and abilities. Kathy talked about understand the needs of the student and the teachers. All great advice. My projections, or what I plan to do after speaking with all these ladies, and I've known Lori for 25 years, and she, as a special education teacher, she's truly amazing, and she is one that truly, truly cares about her students and fights for her students. So I enjoyed, I've known, like I said, known Lori for a very long time, and it was enjoyable for myself to sit down and talk about her role in special education. And then talking with Kathy, she too is amazing, and I learned so much from those. Not that I didn't learn anything from Sarah, but from Kathy and Lori, I felt that I learned a lot about special education, and so I thought I need to do a lot of things better in my role, and I projected that I would do a better job getting to know all the laws and regulations. To better service my students with special needs, I will continue to be a part of all IEP meetings and planning meetings, and I will do a better job of working with my staff to make sure that they are following the IEPs or the accommodation plans. So that is my Module 3 and my interviews. Thank you very much.